Hello, lovelies. Welcome to the world of blurred colors art. The world of Pokemon. I'm Rachel, the Midwest Regional Premier Doll Customizer. But you can call me the Doll Professor for this journey. This world of ours is inhabited by many talented artists who have come together to bring you some of our favorite legendary and mythical Pokemon. You'll find many wonderful dolls in this collaboration. The customizers have entered the arena. Now, let's begin. The dedicated trainers who participated are yours truly, Blurred Colors Art, Stitchwick Creations, Harley's Dollhouse, Middle Rabbit, Sky the Golden, and Dollmaker. Everyone's dolls turned out amazingly, and they did so well, really catching their Pokemon's spirits. From our little preview, you can probably guess that I chose the mythical Pokemon Magearna for my doll. She's a robotic caretaker Pokemon, so I thought Elle Eedee was perfect for her cyborg body. To start our customizing journey, we first need to prepare the doll. To do that, I use thread snips to trim the hair as close to the head as I can. Now we need to soften the doll's head so it can be safely removed from the body. She gets a nice hot bath for several minutes. Then with a rag to protect my hand, I pull the head off the body and squeeze out any excess hot water. To finish removing the rest of the hair, I use a flathead screwdriver to scrape out the glue and plugs from the inside. My cat Felt has been keeping me company as I work more and more lately. Later, she decided it was a good idea to try to eat the hands, so I had to send her out of the office for a while. With a pair of forceps, I pull out the plugs I scraped into the head and the remaining glue. With the hair gone, it's time to remove the factory face. As always, I use 100% pure acetone and a cotton pad to scrub the paint away. I was really surprised that Elle Eedee had such a pretty face sculpt. Sometimes it's hard to tell under the original paint. I chose this Starlight Steel Nylon from Shimmerlocks to reroot her with. Magearna is a steel fairy type, and she has no hair but is solid metal. So I'll be using a lot of grays for her design, with a few pops of gold. I reroot her with the plug and glue method. I have a reroot tool that I purchased online, and I make my own needles. For my needles, I buy size 7 basting needles, and I use wire cutters to snip the end of the eye off at a 45-degree angle. I usually break 2 needles per reroot, but this current needle must be lucky because I've managed to finish 3 dolls without it snapping. That, or maybe my technique has gotten better, but it's probably the needle. I worked my way around the outside of the hairline and decided that I should add a gold color to her hair. I'm using corn silk, also from Shimmerlocks, for the second color. When I reroot, I slide the needle along my thumb to catch the hair. This is very abrasive, so these silicone fingertips are quite useful. As I work on filling the empty holes, I also thatch the part line. I do this by alternating the direction that the hair is laying at the part. When all the holes are plugged, I fill the head with Fabri-tac glue and let it sit upside down overnight. My daughter is helping me by using a cotton swab to make sure all the plugs are properly coated in glue. I like to trim the neck peg down before I put the head back on the body. This just makes the head easy to put on and remove again without damaging the face. The peg also gets in the way of my needles when I wrap the head before doing the face up. Now let's get the hair to lay flat on her head. I carefully pour boiling water over the doll. I had previously clipped her hair to keep the part lines separated, but need to remove the clips now. I don't want to style her hair with an odd crimp from the clips. The hair needs to dry overnight, so while I'm waiting on that, let's work on the outfit. I'll be using a yellow fat quarter and some recycled fabrics to make her clothing from. Magearna's design makes me think of a cute French maid, so I'll be using Requiem Art's Meido Pattern. I've pre-cut all of the pattern pieces and will make the bodice for the dress first. For some reason, I was in the mood for hand sewing. Maybe I just didn't want to get my machine out, but it's been a long time, so it was a nice change. I'm just sewing in the darts that go down the front of the bodice. It's been a long time since I showed any footage of me sewing the clothes, so I thought you all might enjoy it. If you find it boring and just want to skip to the face, I'll have everything marked with chapters. Now that the darts are sewn, I need to gather the top and bottom of the sleeves to make them nice and puffy. To attach the cuffs, lay the unhemmed edge against the gathered bottom of the sleeve, wrong side to good side. Then stitch the cuff in place. Fold the cuff over and you have a clean finish. With the sleeves prepared, it's time to attach them to the bodice. I pin this liberally because I don't want the gathered edge to shift as I sew it in place. After both puff sleeves are sewn to the bodice, I close the side seams from waist to cuff. This is done good side to good side and turn right side out later. The turning right side out bit is pretty difficult at this stage. I use a hook to help grab the cuff and pull it through. Magearna has a blue segment in her chest, so I'm sewing on a blue bib to mimic that. This is a false shirt that I am stitching to the bodice to cut down on bulk. To finish off the bib, I have two tiny collar pieces that I pre-hemmed with glue. There isn't a lot of surface area to work with, so I'm using Fabri-tac to attach them instead of sewing. Then I clip them in place so they can dry as securely as possible. While I have it out, I quickly hem the back closure with Fabri-tac. I sew some snaps on for the closure. Off camera, I sewed a yellow ruffle to the bottom of the skirt with my machine. Oh, and I attached the skirt to the bodice, completing the main part of the outfit. To mimic the yellow stripes on Magearna's round bottom segment, these things, I'll stitch a ribbon into the skirt. I seal the ends of the ribbon with heat and tie a knot at one end so that it doesn't pull through. Then I thread the ribbon with about 2.5 centimeters distance on the outside of the skirt, with 2 stitches on the top row and 3 on the bottom. After threading the last stitch, I tie it off on the inside of the skirt and even out the ribbon so it droops a little. That actually looks better than I expected it to. Magearna also has a golden ring that is divided and circles a small shield on her front. I use craft foam to make these decorations from. They're not exactly symmetrical, but they look good enough on the dress. The yellow is nice as is, but I want the foam to look a bit more metal-like. So I'm giving one side a coat of chrome powder. I glue them directly to the dress with Fabri-tac. Now to make the shield that sits in the center. I use the same method of foam and chrome powder for this. And glue it in place. Magearna has a red and blue split indent in her chest. I'll mirror this by making a pendant that is attached to her dress. I paint this on printer paper with acrylic paint. While I wait for the paint to dry, I gloss the foam pieces on the dress with Sculpey Gloss Glaze. This will seal in the chrome powder and give it a shiny appearance. I use Elmer's glue all to finish the pendant. I glob some on the dried paint and press a glass cabochon into it. Wiggle it a little and press firmly to squeeze out all the excess glue. I use a paper towel to wipe away the glue. Then cut it out once the glue is dry. I glue the pendant to the front of the outer dress, just like I did the foam pieces. I went back and forth on giving her stockings, but in the end decided that it would balance the outfit out. It will be faster and easier to sew these by hand due to the stretchy fabric. I just sew a straight running stitch up the back of the stocking. Each one takes about 6 minutes to finish. I stretch the stocking out every few stitches. This will allow it to stay stretchy when finished. I marked my seam with a water erasable marker, so I'm just giving everything a quick spray before turning the stocking out. I put them on a spare doll while they were still wet so they would dry in the shape of the leg. Since Magearna is a caretaker Pokemon, I'm leaning into the maid aesthetic and making her a ruffly headband. I run a gathering stitch through some lace and play with the length and position until I'm happy with it. To hold it in place, I sew a thin yellow ribbon through the headband. I keep either end long, about the length of the rerooted hair, so that I can braid the ribbon into her hair later. This will keep it secure while also adding a gold pop of color to the gray. Now for the shoes. I give these shoes that I had from an apple white doll a quick coat of gesso. I give them a base coat of black off camera. Then I give the shoes a few layers of chrome powder. Magearna doesn't have any black in her design, and I was thinking with enough layers of powder I'd have a nice shimmery metal look. It didn't quite work how I thought, probably because I only sealed the powder in once, but I liked the end result a lot anyway. Here's how they looked after a coat of gloss glaze. I painted the molded ribbons yellow to prepare for the next step, which is a mix of Pearl X powder with gloss to paint them. I just mix the powder directly with the gloss until I'm happy with the consistency. The more powder you mix, the more opaque it will be, and the less powder, the more translucent. It's not very clear on camera, but they are quite shiny in person. I really like them. With the outfit finally complete, it's time to start the face. I give the doll a spray of Mr Super Clear UV flat cut and wait 3 hours. Usually I just wait 1 hour, but it was raining when I sprayed. The sealant took much longer to fully dry, and even then it barely took any pigment from my pencils. I set her to dry in an airtight tub of rice next to a heating vent, but even with that it acted up. I was unable to even do a light sketch, so we get to do an all watercolor paint doll today. If you saw my last video, you might know that my gouache paint has completely dried up and won't rehydrate. I could try to do this face with acrylic, but I don't love the idea of not being able to undo a mistake or end up with a lot of chunky cover-ups. It took a bit of practice for me to figure out how much water to mix into the paint to get the consistency I needed. Too much water and it ran, or would bubble and pool away from the plastic. Too little and I wouldn't get any kind of control or fluidity from the paint, and would need to get more pigment frequently. It took to this point for me to get it right. But then it worked really nicely. Knowing how long to wait for the paint to dry before adding another color without the first bleeding was trial and error as well. Or how quickly to try to mix in a color for blending. I thought I had a good base to work over, so I gave the doll another spray of MSC and tried my pencils again. It was still raining. We had some crazy storm for almost 2 weeks straight, and I was doing my best to get this doll done with my collaborators. I didn't make the deadline for the video, but I did get the doll done in time for the group photos. I'm sorry to my doll friends for being late. So, as you can see on the face, the pencils are still not really working. I even switched to my Inktense brand, which are super pigmented. This color is quite dark and it's just not going on, so let's try something else. With the pencils still not working, I figured I would give adding some depth with pastels a go. I switch back and forth between red and very light pink to try to create a glow in the center of the iris. I also dab pale yellow highlights onto the raised surfaces of the metal eyelashes. Then I work in some blue into the sculpted panel lines on her face. Magearna has a little cross or star catchlights in the center of her eyes. I paint these in with white watercolor and clean up the shapes with a matching pink. Then I go in with the dark brown and outline the eye details. I bring back some of the eye whites that got covered up by the outlines. I continue enhancing the android elements of her face with watercolor paints. Magearna has a cute surprised face in their artwork, so I decided to part her lips a bit. I'm feeling pretty satisfied with the painting, but wanted to make her feel a little more organic. A little bit of blush will help that. I mix red and pink again to get the right shade. I'm still learning how not to overdo it with the pan pastels, but it's easy enough to remove part of the pigment with a magic eraser. Here's how the finished face looks. Before I can really call her done though, I want to gloss her eyes and lips. I'm using Sculpey Gloss Glaze for this. I'm also giving the gold eyelashes a coat of gloss since they're metal and it makes sense that they might shine. With the gloss dry, it's time to release her from the head wrap. I styled her hair into 2 braids before doing the face up, and I'm happy to say that it survived nicely. And finally, she's complete. Magearna is my first Pokemon doll I've completed. I'm definitely tempted to do more, but my to-do list is always growing longer. I have a slew of collabs lined up for the summer, a giveaway planned, and a Monster Girl series I'd love to start on. And of course, gifts for family and several personal dolls. All that to say, it's gonna be a busy year. Maybe I'll slip another Pokemon doll in here or there, but I hope you enjoy what I have planned either way. And I hope you enjoyed watching Magearna's creation. It was a little bit of a bumpy ride, but I learned a lot and had fun. What about you? Do you have a favorite Pokemon? Drop me a comment and let me know who it is. Magearna is interesting to me, but my favorite Pokemon is actually Eevee. I love their potential to become whatever their trainer needs. Have you seen the other videos yet? If not, don't forget to check the links in the video description. Everyone's Pokemon dolls turned out so well, I'm not sure who would win in an epic battle. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.